everybody. Are we live? Are we here? Are we here? Are we here? Are we alive? Are we alive? We're live. Are we alive? Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
And until the chat room says so, I just won't believe it.
I mean, you think philosophically that you know that you're alive, but do you really know you're alive until somebody says that they can hear you?
Aaron Laura has confirmed our existence. So we
exist.
We now are.
Yes.
We now am.
I stream, therefore I am. We are here to bring you some science fun. This is the live broadcast of the This Week in Science podcast, and we hope that you do enjoy our weekly broadcast. Live, uninterrupted. I don't know, maybe there'll be interruptions. We have no idea what's going to happen because it's live. I mean, we've thought about things we want to talk about, but, it's live, so we don't really know what's going to happen. The thing that we do know is that after the fact, it's going to be edited and the podcast will come out. So I do hope that if you're not here for this, that you'll be there for that. So make sure you subscribe to TWIS wherever you listen to podcasts so that you can hear us in your ears. But now it's time for us to stream. That's right. We're ready. Are you ready? Justin?
I'm ready.
You're
totally ready.
Okay. We're missing a Blair tonight, but we can do this. We can do this. We used to do this. We did this for years before there was a Blair.
It's fine. And as we discussed in the pre-show, really the only reason Blair's on the show is in case I fail to show up. And I'm here, so
Okay.
Problem solved.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Don't let Blair see that.
She doesn't watch. She's not going to watch this. She won't go back.
Watch
She's
it.
busy.
She's too busy for us tonight. All right, everyone. Let us start this broadcast in 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 846, recorded on Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. How do you dig fossils? Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on the show, we are going to fill your head with people, poop, and pain. But first...
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. The end of the world is coming. But it's probably a really long way off, like billions of years, maybe. But then again, it might not be. But if it's going to happen soon, there's really nothing you can do about it. So why worry? Yeah, you could maybe prepare and try to save yourself. Live in the aftermath of civilized society, roaming a dead planet with a handful of human remnants. But really, what's the point of that? That doesn't sound like any fun. If the world can end abruptly and soon, wouldn't it be a better idea to start identifying how that might happen and maybe, try to prevent it? And if history class has taught us anything, it's that science class is where all the real solutions are. And nowhere is that more obvious than This Week in Science, coming up next. Can't leave me hanging mid-anticipatory dance move.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki.
And a good science to you too, Justin. And no Blair tonight. She is off this week and next week, and we wish her well in her adventures and plannings and all the doings that she does. But we have science in the meantime. This show has got to keep going. So, hello everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back to talk about all the science that we found that we want to talk about because there's so much and there's always great news out there. And it is a wonderful, inspirational midweek science romp, right?
Yeah.
Let's get a little inspiration. Let's do this. I want to talk first, though, about the fact that it is National Fossil Day today. And as we are recording this show, that's what day it is. And President Biden did something cool in relation to National Fossil Day. He reversed the cuts made by President Trump to Utah's Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante national monuments. Reverted them back to their full sizes and is in the process preserving indigenous heritage sites and also fossils. Lots of paleontological interest in these areas of Utah. So today is a good day for fossils and for people and for nature.
Yeah, and for the people whose land that rightfully is. To have it undisturbed by people who don't live there.
And care nothing about it. Exactly.
About it, yeah.
Yes. Oh, so our presidential fossil preserved the fossils and the heritage. On the show, we have all sorts of stories. I have a story about Mars. We got to go to Mars. I have a couple of stories about space, actually.
Oh.
3 stories about space: stars, Mars, and the future. We'll be getting to those. But then I also have pain, because I have to bring pain. Bring the pain to the science. Justin, what did you bring?
So I've got a just good news segment to start off the show, and then I think the rest of, like, all your stories are space stories. All mine are about mass extinctions.
Oh no, fossils to be.
Fossils that have been.
Okay.
A lot of it's all heavily fossil record dependent. Yeah, and a little bit of a Bible tale to tell as well.
Bible tale.
We're gonna have Bible
I like
studies.
stories. I love tales and stories and history, and science is rich and rich with the historical tales. All right. I'm at this point, I would normally say, "Hey, Blair, what's in the animal corner?" And she'd tell me something about animals. But
there is an animal corner. There is an animal corner, isn't there?
There kind of is, but it's not Blair's Animal Corner.
Not
and
Blair's Animal Corner. With not Blair.
You'll have to wait for that when it does come. In the meantime, though, if you have not yet subscribed to This Week in Science, you can find us on our social media accounts: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We are TWIS Science on Instagram and Facebook. We are also TWIS Science on our streaming Twitch channel, and we are TWIS and This Week in Science on YouTube and Facebook, and This Week in Science on every podcast platform that is out there, pretty much. And we do hope that you find us out there. But if you have a hard time remembering all that, just go to twis.org, our website. Time for the science?
Yeah, let's bring it.
Yeah, okay. All right, this week, I mean, just today, really, there's some big news. Captain Kirk beamed into orbit aboard a Blue Origin rocket today. He's like, I mean, really, it was more rockety. And anyway, that was great. So he's the oldest guy who ever went to space. The James Webb Space Telescope made it safely without being pirated away by pirates on the water. It's down in French Guiana. It's going to hopefully launch in December, which would be very exciting. It made it safely. That's great. But okay, we've got these things about here and now and today, but what is going to be happening to humanity in 5 billion years? Where will we be?
Gone.
Or living on a moon around Saturn or Jupiter. Someplace not Earth. Because what's going to happen in about 5 billion years? Justin, do you know what's going to happen?
By that point, the sun will have gotten loosened its waistband, and we will be in the higher heat envelope of the outer part of the sun.
Yeah, so the sun will start expanding, and so the heat will expand out with it. It's going to be this red giant, and then as it expands and expands and expands, eventually it'll crash back down and become a white dwarf. But before that happens, it's going to go red giant, 5 billion years or so. But some researchers just published their analysis of what could possibly happen. They, with the W.M. Keck Observatory on Mauna Kea, Hawaii, they observed a larger than our Jupiter, but Jupiter-like planet in a Jupiter-like orbit around a white dwarf star. They found it because they were like, oh, what's this planet thing that we see? And then, wait, shouldn't it be around a star? And then they were like, oh, but we can't, that's that really tiny, dim light. That's a white dwarf. It must be around a white dwarf and not around anything bigger. And so they say that the evidence that they're seeing confirms that it's possible for planets in a solar system to survive their star going through red giant and becoming white dwarfs. So what this suggests is that potentially we could move in the next 5 billion years or so to one of the moons around Jupiter or Saturn, and hopefully we would survive. We would just get a little bump, and it might be nice and toasty on that moon after a while.
Right. Well, I mean, it's 5 billion years. Like, that's like longer than the planet has been here. That's extremely optimistic.
I mean, it's optimistic that humanity will be around that long.
Persistence of any life form, to think that a 5 billion year run is a thing. But by then, shouldn't we already be living on all the moons? Or like at least some people. I don't know who wants to live on a moon.
I would hope if we make it past the next century, even 2 centuries, hopefully we'll make it 5 billion years. Hopefully within 5 billion years, our technology will be so advanced to make this a completely moot point. But
yes, because it will have replaced us, and then that technology then would need to survive in 5 billion years. Now I understand.
It's all for our robots, all for our leftover technology. Yeah, but it's a fascinating kind of proof of concept based on having found an existing planet out there that we could conceivably move to another part of the solar system, just a different part of the neighborhood, and still do just fine. And in other news, for spaceflight, considering this whole 5 billion years going to space, humans going to space and all that, we might want to work on our brain physiology, because according to a new study looking at the markers of brain health in the blood of astronauts, they looked at astronauts before they went into space and then after they came back. We know that there are changes to the brain because of the microgravity environment. And mostly negative stuff that we have seen has been related to ocular pressure and, eyesight is maybe affected a bit. But we've wondered about the brain. And so this blood study found a whole bunch of markers that suggest the brain goes through a lot of stress. It's kind of like brain trauma, like a slow motion car accident.
Oh, geez.
And that when you come back from being in space, your brain is having to kind of repair itself from that microgravity, the change in the microgravity.
Well, maybe it's like, muscles. You got to tear down the muscles to build them back stronger. Maybe that's how brains work.
No, not so much.
No, that's not really a thing.
But obviously, it is not as obvious as, say, the trauma that occurs as a result of an impact, traumatic brain injury. But there is damage. The markers appear to be very similar to markers that are seen in Alzheimer's disease. So maybe there are changes in tau proteins and others of these neurofibrils that hold things together. So the architecture of the brain is potentially being affected in a way that we need to look into.
You ever notice on Star
protect
Trek?
The brain in space.
Star Trek, it's on the Star Trek series, it's always mostly young people on that ship. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's they just don't last much after that those voyages through space. It's just pretty
Well,
much
now we
over.
just need to talk to Captain Kirk. I mean, oldest man in space.
Oldest man,
for
yeah.
a few hours. Wasn't that long, but it happened.
Oh no, he's well. No, he may. Wait, for a second I was like, there was another older man who like went into space right after. Like, he only had the record that long. No, he's currently the oldest man ever to touch the hem of space. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The hem of space. Now I'm imagining like the elderly skirt chasing space astronauts. Okay. That's enough for me. I need to just move away from the space topics. Justin, what do you want to tell me about?
I've got the Just Good News segment, the segment that dares to take on the worst topics of the day and seeks out just the good news about them. This will be a climate edition. I can't wait to find out what this story is about. It looks like researchers have discovered that a naturally occurring substance is a powerhouse of carbon sequestration. Can be used even to deflect heat from the Earth's surface, and is highly efficient at trapping methane gas and reducing erosion that leads to natural carbon release into the environment. And it turns out this substance forms in great abundance in many parts of the world and is easily accessible. Oh, that sounds good. That sounds like good news. The substance researchers discovered has all these properties: ice and snow.
Okay.
With warming climate, summer sea ice in the Arctic has been shrinking fast, and now consistently spans less than half the area it did in the 1980s.
Yep. We're losing our shine.
Yeah, I'm gonna just stop it right there. I'm gonna get away from the Just Good News story and go to a completely different story. 2,700-year-old human feces was discovered in a prehistoric salt mine in Austria. Researchers found the presence of two fungal species within this paleo feces. Looks like it was used. They said these are the fungal species that you would use today in the production of blue cheese and beer. Findings appear in the current journal, Current Biology. Yeah, so they did a genome-wide analysis of these fungi and found, these are the ones that we use today in food fermentation. They suggest that they seem to have intentionally applied food fermentation technologies with microorganisms that the current modern-day food industry is using, which pushes back the first evidence that people were using blue cheese.
I love that.
Iron Age in Europe. Yeah.
They had advanced palates. You know, they had these palates that enjoyed the wonderful flavors of blue cheese.
Yeah.
And beer.
And being a microbiologist in the modern day can be difficult at times. You lose the power goes down if you didn't have the power backups, and your freezers, and now your samples, your spores are going to go bad, the whole thing. I'm kind of picturing they must have found a spot. I see this every once in a while where they tour a French cheesemonger place or whatever, where they're making French cheese. And the fungus that is the key ingredient to the cheese will also be like living in the walls and in the ceiling. Like it permeates the building. So I'm kind of wondering.
But you don't eat the building, you just eat the cheese.
Yeah, but it just kind of naturally finds its way into the cheese. And that's a lot of the early breweries and beer making was done outdoors in places where it could come into contact with the yeast. But this is a point where they have a pretty steady diet of blue cheese and beer. I kind of wonder if they didn't somehow create areas, where if they weren't inoculating buildings or vessels or containers of some sort with the fungi that they needed to produce their foods. Because it seems at that point you're really relying on it. And so mastery would be the next logical step. And apparently it stuck because we still do it today. We still are using them today.
Right. I mean, it's using what's in your environment and it does something. You can notice the effect. It didn't kill you. It tastes good. You enjoy it. And then, or it, oh, that I don't have to cook this thing anymore. Or, oh, this took a shorter amount of time for it to happen. Or, oh, look, now I've got this funny feeling in my head from, drinking beer and having the fermentation process. But you start noticing these things and that worked, that didn't work, that tastes good, that doesn't taste good, and it's what's in your environment. I'm going to imagine it was only fairly recently that we started really cultivating particular strains. I mean, I wonder, how long ago was we talked to the microbiologist, we were talking about sourdough starters and how people have kind of traded sourdough starters around the world, but really at what point did that start? And what were sourdough starters like a gift that was taken from one ancient people to another?
Yeah, I'd be very curious. I'd be very curious to see a record of that kind of cultivation.
Yeah.
Somewhere back there. Be very interesting.
Different blue cheeses have different flavors. They would because of that. But that would be, fascinating. I love it. And I love that this whole thing is like, oh, we can look at the leftover fecal matter from humanity, look at the fungus, realize that it was a fungus that's used in this kind of food. We're looking at other markers as well. But oh my gosh, they were enjoying blue cheese and beer.
Yeah.
They had a great diet.
And had apparently a high fiber diet.
Yeah. Much better than we do these days with all of our Cheetos and other things.
Yeah,
Real
it's all
cheese,
thanks
not
to the
Cheetos.
it's all thanks to the salt mine preserving it.
Yep, that's right. We talked about that before. Yeah, so many fun foodie things. But let's move on from food. You want to dig into some more space? Water on Mars? Well, not right now, but old water on Mars?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Researchers just published in Science magazine their work coming from the Perseverance rover, revealing what they say is an ancient delta lake system and flood deposits at Jezero crater on Mars. They've taken a whole bunch of pictures, and those pictures show formations that look very much like the formations here on Earth that are indicative of the edges of a lake that kind of went up and down for a little while, and floods that occasionally came in, bringing excess water that moved boulders into the area. And these different structures that they're looking at from space, they said, okay, so we've got this Jezero crater has this kind of fan shape coming into it. And this could have happened just based on wind and soil movement. This could have just been a surface feature. The only way to actually go and find out if it could have been a lake, if this was actually a lake and not just a crater, that if this had water in it, was to go and look at it from the ground and to start getting those actual ground level features that you can't get from looking down from above, which we've done before. Which I think one of the coolest things is like, oh, it's the change in perspective allows us to really start to get an idea of the forces that are affecting the surface of Mars and how similar they were to forces that are happening still here on Earth. So we've got this one particular ridge that they're calling Kodiak Ridge that's in Jezero crater. And at Kodiak Ridge, they're seeing a whole bunch of sedimentary layers that are indicative of these deposition of layers of sediment because of small changes in the edges of a lake. And then additionally, they've got larger boulders and changes to the lines that they see in the sediments that are obviously changes that where the ground moved, where floods came in, where things were shifted around. And so they're able to look and say, this is the process that took place over geologic time. So Perseverance is now giving us real evidence that Jezero crater, where they are, they chose it on purpose because of the features that they saw from above, but now where they are, looking at it, they're thinking they can sample the boulders, and the boulders will give them, if they can dig into the boulders, they will give them geological material that is from earlier levels, so kind of deeper under the crust of Mars that would have been covered up. So because those boulders were rolled down because of floods, it's like this other material that's being brought to the crater that they maybe have a chance to look at. And then the soils that are on the surface, they could potentially, digging in, have evidence of old organic material. So because this was an old lake, maybe at the edges of this lake, they'll find evidence of microbiological life. Fossils,
Yeah.
ancient fossils on Mars. Will we find them?
That would be pretty cool.
Would be cool.
But this really is probably the most ideal location.
Yeah.
Really, if you think about the formation of life happened so quickly on Earth. From how old we believe the Earth to be to when first life, it did not take very long for life the chemistry of life to take hold. And when you get a not a giant ocean world, but when you get this puddle that's exposed to some change and to some heat,
you have the drying and the wet and the drying and the wet, and you have these floods that come through occasionally, and
and you have these concentrations then that create the chemistry. The chemistry interactions are going to happen with great frequency, and I think that's a pretty great spot to be looking for life. I hope we find it. That would be so exciting.
It would be very exciting. And so Perseverance is going to be going around taking a bunch of samples, and as we've talked about before, it's going to be pooping them out so that the future collaborative mission with the European Space Agency and NASA can come and scoop those little suckers up and hopefully have a sample return to Earth for this confirmation. This is still years off, but it's really fun to be able to kind of go, wow, are we seeing the start? This is one of those little pebbles on the path toward discovery. Yeah. Tell me another story. Do you have another story for this first one?
Yeah. Okay. So this whole week is going to be fossils,
So is this going to be good news now? More good news? No.
Okay, it can be. 37%. That's the number of mammal species that didn't vanish from Africa and the Arabian Peninsula around 30 million years ago. Put that spin on it.
Great, thanks. A whole 37%.
37% did not vanish.
And we are vanishing them now.
This is after the Earth's climate shifted significantly from a hot, swampy mess that it was to a iceberg planet. So compiling decades of work, a new study published this week in the journal Communications Biology reports a previously undocumented extinction event that followed the transition between the geological periods called the Eocene and Oligocene. This is, 30 million years ago. It's a reverse sort of image of what's kind of happening today. Back then, climate change was the Earth growing colder and colder. Ice sheets were expanding, sea levels were dropping because all the water was being put into the ice at the caps. Forests started transitioning into grasslands, and carbon dioxide became very scarce in the atmosphere compared to where it is now or where it was just a few hundred years ago. Nearly 2/3 of the species known in Europe and Asia at that time. Wait, I got to keep this positive. Nearly 1/3 of the species known in Europe and Asia at that time did not go extinct. Up until recently, though, up until this study, African mammals were thought to have escaped unscathed because Africa's climate, it's along the equator. could have been a nice warmth buffer from the worst of the cooling trend that was going on elsewhere on the planet. But the new research shows that despite the relatively balmy environment sustaining, African mammals were just as affected as those from Europe and Asia. And they figured a lot of this out through teeth. So a lot of this came from private collections of people who've been collecting fossils over many, many, many years. They gathered data on hundreds of fossils from multiple sites, and what they sort of witnessed was a drop-off of species where they just sort of seemed to disappear as they had been before the events. And then a reemergence of similar but different. And the difference was mostly seen in the teeth. They had a little bit new, as they popped up again in the fossil record, like these rats or mice would sort of disappear and they'd come back, but their teeth were almost completely different, like almost as though they were a new species. And the reason they think this is because they had to adapt. They had to completely change habitats, completely change diets, eating new things. The old teeth weren't doing the job, so they needed new dental shapes to adapt better to the new ecology that they found themselves in. And one of those mammals that managed to survive, one of those third of mammals in Africa that managed to survive, were the ancestors of modern humans. So luckily we didn't go extinct.
Well, that is some good news. We made it.
We did. We've survived extinctions in the past. So maybe we can do it again.
Maybe we can do it again. Yeah. Or maybe some other species will climb up out of a grand extinction that's caused by us and become the next great thinker on the planet.
I think the orcas already are working on it.
Yeah. There are a lot of species that are ready for it.
The rhinos. The rhinos are totally doing it.
Oh, they're the cuddly ones, right? You think they're not cuddly, but they're really
They're
just
sweet,
they're the puppies. Yeah,
big
they're
puppies.
great. It's amazing. We talk about these punctuated equilibriums in evolution. We talk about these bottlenecks that have occurred throughout evolutionary time to kind of hold things up, and then things radiate out. But it's really amazing to see that, we have these extinctions, and as long as some remain, as long as there are certain organisms that have traits that can adapt and that, genetics is going to continue. It's going to mutate. It's going to work. As long as machinery's there, the organisms can have the potential to survive and reproduce. That natural selection can lead to the next and the next and the next and the next, and radiation can happen to take advantage of new habitats.
Yeah, and actually that's what my story later on is also going to touch on that theme. And it's sort of interesting too, because you think, well, how can, because there's the 66 million year old extinction event that we'll talk a little bit about later. And it's the same thing, like 66% of all the creatures on the planet and dinosaurs and everything went extinct. And then life springs back. And then here you have another 30 million years ago, 66% of mammals going extinct. How can we keep doing this? So the sort of interesting thing is, you would think like, well, gosh, if we just stopped having these mass extinctions, there'd be a much more diverse variety of animals on the planet. But the truth of the matter is, it probably wouldn't be that much more diversity. I mean, you could maybe have like dinosaurs that were, doing some role that is now another animal is doing. But what keeps happening is, when there are all those open spaces in the food chain, or when there's those niches that can be exploited for resources, something fits in there. And that's when we also see a lot of convergent evolution taking place, where a completely different creature is now eating the same food that some ancient extinct creature ate for 1 million years. And over time, it evolves very similar teeth, or very similar strategies, or very similar size, weight ratio, or whatever, because it's eating the same thing. It needs the same toolkit to survive. So even though we keep getting extinct and losing a lot of diversity, evolution builds that diversity back in with next generations of animals. So,
well, because it's the diversity that allows that use of different parts of habitats. It allows an organism to take advantage of something and to capitalize on a resource that it potentially couldn't capitalize or that nobody else was capitalizing on. Allows it to survive in just the right way. That's where diversity really starts to have its real magic. Yeah. But once again, we got to go look back after looking at our planet and what's happened here through evolutionary time. Let's look at the universe. Researchers have been trying to look at the galactic center. The center of the Milky Way galaxy. What's there? There's so much stuff just in the Milky Way galaxy. I mean, we talk about the whole universe. There's so much stuff just in the Milky Way galaxy that we have no idea. So researchers are like, let's point our telescopes at the center. Let's look at the galactic center and take a look at what's going on there. And these researchers discovered what they think is a variable star, but they're not really sure. They've got this really weird, unpredictable
star.
It's a radio signal, and it's intermittent. It's unpredictable. It's a little weird. And they went and they tried to see if they saw a visible signal, whether there was light coming from wherever this signal came from. There's no light. They're not seeing anything. They're just getting this radio signal. And it's just, they're published in Astrophysical Journal this week. And the signal it's like a little bit, and then it'll stop for a period of time. And then it'll get stronger, and then it'll fade away. And then it'll come back, and then it'll go away. And it's got just this variability, and it was on and off, and they didn't really know if it was going to come back again. And so they tried looking again, and luckily it did come back, but it was happening a lot more frequently. It's not like any other variable star that has been described to date, because they can't actually connect it to a star. They haven't been able to connect it to anything physical releasing light. It's only a radio signal that's coming from the galactic center. And so the researchers, it's now named ASCAP, ASKAP, J173608.2-321635. As they...
Catchy. Very catchy name.
Love to give these things their catchy names as they are working on this. They've named it after its coordinates. That is where it is found in the sky. And it really was invisible, became bright, faded away, then reappeared. That's what the researchers are saying. So now they're going to keep looking to see if they can learn anything else about this signal, because we don't know where it's coming from, other than the center of the galaxy. We don't know what is causing it. We don't know what's happening. There's a researcher from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee who's a supervisor on this project, and he says that the information we do have has some parallels with the emerging class of objects known as galactic center radio transients, including one called the cosmic burper. So apparently there are transient radio signals coming from near the galactic center, and one of them burps.
I like Fada in the chat room's answer better. It's the syndicated broadcast of Dr. Demento.
Could be.
It could be.
Yeah, so I mean, what is happening around a star? Is it dust? Is it gas getting in the way? Why? What objects near the galactic center would be causing these radio signals? Are these stars that are emitting radio signals? If you think that they're stars, you'd probably get light along with them as well, unless they're so far away or blocked by something so that we can't get the light from them for whatever reason. Are they coming from areas of dark matter? Are they coming from black holes? We don't know. It's a big mystery. Yeah. Yes, could be radio waves bouncing back. For
It could be.
sure.
And then,
And it is
that's
not
like,
a fast radio burst. No,
and
it's not fast. It's transient.
could be all of those things to some degree. Because, I mean, it's you're talking about towards the center of the galaxy. That's a pretty crowded neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it could be,
A lot
a
going
bunch of stuff
on.
getting in the way of a thing, or a thing passing in front of, like, it could be other, whole solar systems getting in the way of the thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. There could be a lot going on. Or, as Jezero is saying, could be a Dyson sphere. Yes, could be just sufficiently advanced civilizations that we're finally capturing their signals. But that, again, is just one idea. It's a hypothesis. Most likely, we don't know. And we have a signal, and that's all we have. And this is just grounds for a lot more research. More questions. That's what we like. So many more questions. This is This Week in Science. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Science Fun. If you love the show, please consider heading over to twis.org and ordering one of our TWIS Blair's Animal Corner 2022 calendars. Blair has done a lot of work to put together some great artwork for this year's or next year's calendar, and they are available for sale now. We will be mailing them out as soon as we get them in. I hope that we are able to get them to you before 2022. But sales of these calendars do support the show, and they're also a great way for you to keep track of awesome science-y events year-round. I would come back right now and start a COVID update, but there's no COVID news. I'm just not doing COVID this week. We're not going to do it. We're surrounded by it. Kids are back in school. COVID went up. Correlation, whatever. Let's not have Blair's Animal Corner.
I feel like I should have handled the Just Good News segment that way. I should have just been, Just Good News. Let me skim over what's here. Yeah, no. I like your style, Kiki. I like your style. I got nothing good to say. Just move along. Move along.
Nothing to see here. Nothing good to say. This is the new science show. Nothing to see here. But we do have some Not Blair's Animal Corner. Not Blair's Animal Corner.
With Not Blair.
Yeah. Okay. So first, I want to talk about, I just want to talk about primates, because primates are amazing. So we're going to talk about primates for a little bit in this Not Blair's Animal Corner. First story is that gorillas hear voices.
Oh.
And can discern and differentiate between speakers. Researchers at the University of Georgia played recordings of researchers and handlers, veterinarians, the zoo maintenance person, to the gorillas that they had in captivity. And the question was, do they actually know different individuals? Are they paying attention to different individuals, or are they just reacting to, the way that the veterinarians look? When a veterinarian comes in, the gorillas get upset, but is it because they know that that particular person is a veterinarian? Or, is it they're dressed like a veterinarian? They're wearing their vet tech clothes, or it's the maintenance person wearing the maintenance clothes. They don't like the maintenance person.
Now they don't like anybody because the face mask is what they associated with the vet, and now everybody's wearing them, so they're just constantly irritated.
Right. And so they recorded all voices saying, hello, good morning, for all of the people that would normally come into the gorillas' enclosure, and that the gorillas would know or not know. And then they also had total stranger voices. And they played them over the course of 3 months to the gorillas to see what would happen. And what do you do if you hear a voice outside your front door? If it's a voice you don't recognize. You're sitting in your living room and you suddenly hear a voice, somebody talking right outside your front door. What would you do?
Open the door and see who it is.
Well, you could do that, but most people would kind of stop. Or if you hear somebody like walking and talking right next to your house, next to your window or something, like you're like, perk up. You get quiet. You start paying attention because you want to figure out whether or not this person is a threat. Are they going to rob my house? What's going on? Oh, they're the gardener.
Gosh.
Okay, it's fine. It's fine. It's great. And then you're fine and you can relax. But once you realize that someone is not a threat, you can relax and go about your business. Gorillas are the same exact way, and they determined that the gorillas in this zoo could differentiate the voices of the different people that they came into contact with. So they knew the voices of the veterinarians versus their zookeepers that they really liked. And so when they heard the voices of the hello, good morning, they would get like calm, happy behavior if it was their nice zoo handlers versus the veterinarians who were going to come and give them shots and stuff. So the gorillas, they know, they pay attention. And this is some evidence that you would think, duh, they're gorillas. They're smart. They're going to pay attention to other animals in their environment. They're going to pay attention to other individuals. But this is really letting us know that they really are paying attention to who different people are around them and how those people affect them.
I think there's probably also a stigma or a stereotyping of gorillas because one or two gorillas learn sign language. People assume gorillas are deaf.
I did not know where you were gonna go with that one. Okay.
I'm just happy you didn't talk about the chimps with leprosy story. That was awful.
I saw that headline. It makes me so sad. Yeah.
I saw the headline. The headline was sad, but it came with a picture that just was. I still am trying to fight off.
Yep.
Don't Google it.
Same. Don't Google it. Don't Google chimps with leprosy. Yeah, and that one's interesting because it's usually we think of the bushmeat trade that viruses are going to, or bacteria, whatever, parasites that have hosts in the primate species are going to spill over into humans. And that's what we worry about. But we spilled over into the chimps. This is on us because leprosy was a human disease.
See, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. But then, so this is a human to animal transmission of this disease. Then, see, I didn't read the story. I couldn't get past the picture that was in the thing. Oh wow. Yeah, it's a microorganism that is that it likes humans. That is adapted to humans, and we gave it to chimps. Aren't we great? Oh, wow. No, we're not. But in the good news from the gorilla story, going back to the gorillas, is not all gorillas are deaf. That is fantastic to know. Oh, that's not it.
No. And on top of that, this means that if gorillas in the wild hear voices, scientists who study gorillas in the wild worry that they could be sensitizing wild gorilla populations to people and making it more likely that gorillas will get caught by the bushmeat traders and the hunters that are out there. But what this study indicates is that gorillas, because they recognize individual voices and individuals, that just being around humans is not necessarily going to make them easier prey for humans. So potentially an upside to that.
People eat gorillas? I didn't even know that they were part of that trade because I thought the bushmeat trade was like
hunters hunt everything.
They'll eat
yes,
anything. Yeah,
anything.
But a gorilla, that's like almost cannibalism. That's too close. That's too close.
Yes, too close for comfort. Researchers looked at a whole bunch of primate skulls to figure out what happened. And they looked at old human skulls to figure out what happened to make our molars emerge from our skulls so late in development. Compared to chimpanzees, gorillas, other primates, our molars, our wisdom teeth, especially, they emerge super late. Like we're talking like 18 years old. You're an adult by the time, basically an adult by the time your wisdom teeth are coming out, your final molars. It's something that people have wondered out about for a very long time. Why so long? Why is it so long? Well, these researchers looking at a bunch of skulls, they determined it's because we have strong jaws. So, if you look at skulls of other primates, their jaws protrude out from their face further. We have a very flat face compared to other primates. And because of the strength of the muscles and the strength of the bite and the way that the biomechanics of the human bite works as primates and, our human ancestors' jaw changed, and based on the timing of the development of different muscles and how the head grows and changes, if the molars emerged any sooner, we would break them.
Oh.
So it's all based on the fact that we are strong biters. We have strong jaws, and the teeth would not withstand the force if they came out any earlier.
I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised that we're that strong of. But I would not have. I would have given any gorilla or chimp definite biting power over a human.
You would
Especially
think
a gorilla. They've got the whole that nuchal ridge thing or whatever.
But it's the way that their jaw
so
protrudes and the difference in how the muscles attach and where the force is, how the force works. Where does the force push? How does it work? Yeah. So we are a different primate because of our bite, and it's there was a comment made by a writer who wrote about this, that the timing is really everything. But now this is why for humans. Yep. Okay. That's it for me for that.
This has been Not Blair's Animal Corner. Stay tuned for more of This Week in Science.
On This Week in Science, we ask you to support our podcast because we are listener supported, and it would be wonderful if you do enjoy TWIS on a weekly basis and the science and discussion that we bring you. If you head over to TWIS, click on that Patreon link, and choose your level of support, $10 and more per month, and we'll thank you by name at the end of the show. And there's all sorts of other fun, gifty things that you get for being a patron of TWIS. There's also that calendar. Remember, 2022 is coming. We can't stop it. But let's come back now to some more science. Hey, Justin.
Hey.
You want to answer some questions? Oh, wait. Or not answer questions.
Question times?
No, never mind. Do you want to talk about science?
Sure, why not? 66 million years ago, an asteroid struck the Earth and wiped out most of the dinosaurs and 3/4 of the life on Earth. Early ancestors of primates and marsupials were among the only tree-dwelling mammals that survived. That's a very big mystery. Tree-dwelling species are boreal. Turns out that's easier for me to say than tree-dwelling. Species were especially at risk of extinction because global deforestation caused by wildfires from the asteroid's impact kind of took away all the places where they were used to living. New study, computer models, fossil records, and information from living mammals revealed that most of the surviving mammals did not rely on trees at all. And our human ancestors must have been versatile enough to adapt to the loss of trees, suggesting that they had ecological flexibility during the interval of global habitat instability. So human ancestors, ecologically flexible. It looks like we've survived not one but two major extinction events by being ecologically flexible, because there's this one, and then there's the climate change one 33 million years after this. Yeah, we're pretty good. But do you think we'd make it today, Kiki?
Would we make it today?
If an asteroid hit and just all the houses burned down, forest's fine, but the houses are just all gone. Do you think we'd be flexible enough to like live out in the open for a while?
I think we could, but I'm concerned. My son was just having some issues understanding that there's no internet in the desert necessarily. That,
Oh yeah. Okay.
I'm like, you could go to the desert. He's like, but wouldn't there be internet there? I mean, what if someone needs help? I'm like, well, how would the internet get there? And so, yeah. What would we do, Justin? No houses, no internet. Could we do it?
We would go out and we'd seek the advice from wise old homeless people who have, some experience in these areas. We'd trade all our shiny gold and silver trinkets away and try to get a good solid shopping cart and a stiff piece of cardboard. And we'd just adapt, apparently. At least our ancestors did. I don't know if we would do that. I think most people would just die of thirst and starvation. But anyway, earliest mammals...
I think we could. I mean, I think people are adaptable still. I think we have gotten used to the comforts of civilization, but that does not mean that we need the comforts of civilization.
Yeah, I don't know that everybody's cut from that. People seem to be freaking out because there's not enough product being brought into stores because of shipping line stuff problems. But
there are bigger things to worry about, people. That's all I have to say. But anyway,
yeah, this is the thing. The earliest mammals in the record or in the fossil record appear about 300 million years ago, and they weren't like that amazing at first. But then there was a huge explosion and expansion of flowering plants about 86 million years ago. And as flowering plants evolved and expanded and exploded into diversity, so did then the mammals that were using them for food. So we sort of tracked plant evolution in mammal evolution. So asteroid struck.
That's cool.
Most of this died off along with the dinosaurs. But then what happened was the mammals came back and they diversified and they started to fill all of those roles. Some that might have been the scavenger or predator or herbivore dinosaurs of the past were now more and more being filled by mammals. So again, like we were talking about before, as diverse as life is on the planet, it could be just as diverse, but with totally different animals filling that diversity list if it wasn't for the pesky asteroids that keep wiping out most of life on Earth.
Volcanoes, asteroids, just the big things that we can't control. Yeah.
And the next study, UC Santa Barbara researchers who may have been recently listening to this show are trying to figure out how to make humans survive asteroids. They've come up with a plan of their own for surviving the next big asteroid strike. The plan is to blow up any asteroid heading for us.
That sounds reasonable.
Sounds like a good idea. So actually, it is kind of, it's not that it's totally different than some of the plans in the past, but a lot of plans have been, we'll catch it far enough out and we'll redirect it. We'll put thrusters on it, but the problem is like, okay, you get there and you want to put how do you connect a thruster solidly enough to something hurling through space? Well, if you try to puncture into a thing or drill into it or do anything like that, you're going to just move yourself off. You're not anchored to it anyway. So there's all these bizarre notions of ways that we could like lasso an asteroid or a meteorite in space and try to move it with thrusters. They're saying that's going to take too long, and you have to catch it far enough out, which can happen. They go through these sort of what I guess they're called the keyhole orbits, where it's like you see it go by and you're like, uh-oh. Well, if it's going through there, next time it comes by, 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now, it's going to be coming a lot closer because once it gets through this little area.
Yep.
But what they're looking at is they think they can get a fast enough response by using the spacecraft that we have now to identify something that is inbound. And like instead of sending Kirk up, we can still send Shatner. He can even be part of the mission. You know, we send Shatner up, but then they launch this thing that goes, and basically what they want to do is fragment. They just want to blow the thing up.
Don't you? I mean, if it's far enough away, then fragments are going to be fine. Hopefully, you'll get it into small enough pieces that they would burn up upon entry into the atmosphere, or maybe they're a little big and they'd make it to ground, but the probability of them hitting someplace where people are is small compared to the size of the planet.
So the goal
Right?
is, to make to fragment the asteroid into pieces that are no bigger than or as small, no bigger than a house. So
No
it
bigger than
sounds-
houses. Houses are pretty big. That's a big
Yeah,
piece.
It seems like
That could do a lot of damage, right?
Yeah. So, but what they're worried about is the ones that are coming in. Like, there was the 1908 Tunguska in Tunguska, Russia. It was
Yep.
a 50-meter wide. So this is bigger than a house. This is
Yep.
like a giant. This is a giant mansion house.
Flattened
50-meter.
trees, and it was like a
1,000
nuclear
atomic
bomb
bombs
went off.
going off
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
atmosphere. Like it didn't make it all the way to the ground because there's something about if you come in at too steep of an angle, you decelerate like 90% in the first second, and then another like 90% in the next. It's like insane deceleration that takes place. Tons of
it.
pressure, tons of heat built up in this thing, and it exploded. And there is like a ring of trees that are all laid down away from this. You know, you can almost picture the explosion taking place in there. February 15th, 2013, again in Russia, the Chelyabinsk meteor, 62-foot or 19-meter diameter asteroid, explodes over a city in Russia. 2,000 people are hurt. Windows are getting shattered. Nobody died, thankfully. But the same sort of thing. It came in at that angle, exploded in the atmosphere. Events like these apparently occur once or twice a century.
right. Fairly often. That's
So
often
we've already got one in
Yeah.
2013. You know, feel pretty good for the odds for the rest of the year, but you never know.
for the rest of this year. Great.
Yeah, yeah, for the rest of this year. But that's just playing the odds. But there was sometimes they have maybe some biblical impact on society. There's a Middle Bronze Age city, Tal el-Hammam, can't even pronounce it, located in the Jordan Valley, northeast of the Dead Sea. It was destroyed by one of these airbursts, they think, in 1650 BC. Archaeological excavation of the site began in 2005. They found shocked quartz, melted pottery, diamond-like carbon suit remnants there was bones of people in the thing, melted plaster, melted mud brick, melted minerals that were like platinum, iridium, nickel, gold, silver, zircon, chromium, melted quartz. I mean, this was like a high, intense heat event. It was also a very high concentration of salt in the destruction layer, which researchers speculate could be part of the story of Sodom in Genesis. The good part of the story with the hellfire, not the rest of that story, which is very super creepy, misogynistic, homophobic, pro-incest parts of that story as well. You can Google that one if you want some other time.
Is this
So-
the biblical part of the story that you were teasing earlier?
This is the biblical part of the story.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
But this is
Where it's based on some amount of truth that it was possibly an asteroid, a meteor airburst.
Yeah, because the layers of salt everywhere and mixed with bone, and then just this melted city that had like thick walls and was probably a prosperous city at the time. becomes this. They needed a story to explain what the heck happened. Interesting. 13 miles away is the city of Jericho, which there's a story about people blowing trumpets while walking around, and then the walls of Jericho falling down. But now that Jericho was 13 miles away from a giant explosion that basically incinerated a town, maybe it wasn't the trumpeting that made. Maybe it was more the meteor that left a meter and a half of ash and melted quartz on the ground. So.
The sound of their trumpets melting? No.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, back to how to break down an asteroid. So they're looking, instead of deflecting the object, the strategy is to let Earth take the hit, dismantle the asteroid into smaller house-sized pieces, and let the fragments enter the atmosphere. The atmosphere should absorb the energy and vaporize the house pieces into debris that's so small that it probably won't even touch ground.
I mean, this idea is not an old idea. The idea of let's blow up the asteroid that's coming to destroy the planet. Great. So then it's the real question of how do you do it? So this is probably getting at, okay, this if we know that an asteroid is a certain size, what do we have to hit it with to make it into chunks that are house-sized or smaller? How do we get it so that it's going to come into the Earth at the right angle and have those chunks be vaporized in the atmosphere so that we don't have airbursts, so we don't have devastation? I mean, it's the actual, I guess, the mechanistic aspect of how to go about protecting the planet this is important work.
Yeah, I think that's what they're working on. It's called the PI project, which is standing for pulverize it. They're right to the point.
Oh, that's good.
But they're saying that they could create launch vehicles for their asteroid slicer dicers that you could fit on a SpaceX Falcon 9 and maybe a NASA rocket if NASA still has rockets, and you could have a response time for a big asteroid like Apophis in something like 10 days. Like you could get that mission up and in place and ready to rock within 10 days. And they also have an idea for basically an intercontinental ballistic missile interceptor that could hit a target like the Chelyabinsk one that hit Russia in 2013 in a matter of minutes. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Planetary protection.
Planetary defense. This kind of theoretical work is really important toward that. So, all of you kids out there who like playing with chunks of rock and other chunks of rock, imagine where your childhood joys could go. You could be protecting the planet someday. Yes. Did you have any more of these fun stories?
No, I think that was it. I think that was the last one.
That's the last one?
Yeah.
What?
Unless you want me to tell more about the homophobic pro-incest aspects of the Sodom and Gomorrah story.
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Okay.
That's okay. We'll let other shows dig into those things. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, not a great story. So let's talk about pain and how does pain happen? How does pain happen? And not just any pain, like, okay, we've got the Nobel Prize and everything. It's like touch receptors. Woo! We know we have these receptors in our skin and in our tendons and our joints and we've got these bits of the extension, these cells that are connected to our nervous system that allow our nervous system to go, ooh, something bad happened to the body. The body is in trouble. We must protect it, right? Paper cuts, they're the worst. Why do those have to hurt the worst? But never mind that. chronic pain is something that millions of people deal with, and we don't have adequate treatment for chronic pain. We do know, however, that we don't understand chronic pain. We don't know how certain traumas to the body lead to ongoing pain in the nervous system that you consistently have and you can't get rid of well. So researchers just published their work in which they tied off the neurons, basically little ligatures on the sciatic nerve in mice. So they put a little tweak on it, and it causes pain because it's basically tying off the nerve. It doesn't feel good. The mouse is like, ouch. But what happens then is that they were able to look at the spinal cord and look at the signals, not just the action potentials and those electrochemical signals that are carried up and down the spinal cord to the brain, but they actually were able to look at the changes to cellular structure within the spinal cord. And this is the first validation. They used autofluorescent signaling so that they had markers within the spinal cord that they could then map to specific cells within the spinal cord that were associated with the ongoing pain in the sciatic nerve. This is the first time that researchers have, to some degree, to a small degree, started to get a fingerprint and actually take a picture, image where chronic pain is happening within the spinal cord. Being able to see where the changes are taking place that happen. Okay, there are these neural signals. They make chemical changes, molecular changes happen within the cells. What are those changes? Now we know the cells, or they can look at the cells that are involved, start to see what are the changes that take place, and maybe start to really find some dialed in therapies for chronic pain. It's pretty cool. I think it's it's kind of this inside, like, how does this work? And it's very like a kind of how-to kind of thing. But the idea that they were able to use fluorescence and these fluorescent markers to be able to get a fingerprint of pain changing the spinal cord, changing the way the spinal cord moves signals through it, making chronic pain happen in the mice. It's it could be a big step forward for figuring out pain.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that sciatica too. It was one of those things that
My sciatic nerve sucks.
It just seemed like a weird word that people said, that like old people talked about their sciatic something, and I didn't know what part of the body it was in. Like sciatic, I thought it was a sinus thing, like maybe it's in the nose. Like I had no idea. And then I was like experiencing it, and I was explaining it to somebody. It's like, yeah, it's like my leg just almost doesn't feel like it's in the joint right for a while, and then there's this pain that gets like, and you feel it, like this tingle go down here. Oh, that's your sciatic nerve. That's the thing. And I'm like, no, I don't have that. It's in your sinuses, obviously, because I had no idea until it was like started acting up, and I was describing it, and somebody's like, yeah, that's what you've got.
Your sciatica, yeah. Some of the interesting aspects of this.
Walking upright.
Oh, humans, you silly people, walking upright. That's just, your body doesn't really want to do that.
Hang on. Cheryl Grossman is saying was the biblical story thing that I did. Hasn't that been debunked? I don't know. That was a pretty recent article in Nature. Doesn't mean. I think the asteroid impact isn't debunked. I think if somebody's trying to connect it to this is the source of a Bible story, that might be completely debunkable. That's just some speculation that they were making on the side of it. It's not the story. Yeah.
So an interesting part of this pain story is that they were able to, in addition to just differentiating the tissues from nerve injured individuals versus non-injured individuals. They were able to differentiate between male and female mice, that there was an actual physical difference in the way that the cells reacted in male mice compared to female mice.
Uh-oh.
And
This is
so
good. Don't answer the question. The life of who feels pain more, men or women?
we can't answer that question
Okay. All right.
with it. Well, not yet. Anyway, maybe we'll get there. But it's
I'm sure it's
fascinating
men.
that there is
I'm sure it's men.
a physical, now observable difference in the way that pain is recorded in the spinal cord between men. These are mice.
Men and
Male
women
and
mice.
female.
Of course.
Mice.
This story is about This Week in Mouse Science. I mean, this is
This
really...
week in mouse science. Ooh, except for this last story. Has nothing to do with mice. It has to do with dye. And not like an 18-sided die or 36-sided die or anything
Neither
like
of those
that.
are real. You're losing nerd cred.
This dye is chemical fluorescent dye. Then it's a method that researchers from the George Whiteside's lab have used. These are mixtures of 7 commercially available fluorescent dyes that they are using to save data. We've talked about DNA storage. We've talked about peptide storage. This lab previously has tried to store data, digital data, using peptides, little bits of molecules, little bits of proteins. But one of the students in the lab, a graduate student, came up with this idea for using fluorescent dye. And it turns out that it is cheap, it's efficient, and it's fairly easy to do. So it's a way, and that these dyes, they attach themselves on little like microscope slides. They can attach the dyes attached to a coating on the slides, put a cover on the slide, and then you can use fluorescent light to be able to read it at some point later. This could be an archival method that will allow long-term data storage. Maybe not more than DNA and all that kind of stuff, but cheaper and easier.
Interesting.
Pretty cool. What?
Oh no! If you're still doing the story, keep going.
Yeah. So I was going to say that the researchers report now. They just have reported in ACS Central Science in their paper that this is basically with fluorescent dye. They could use a basic inkjet printing technology to be able to code using binary. It's either there's dye or there's no dye. Does it fluoresce or not fluoresce? And the different colors of dye allow them to have a greater number of bits of information that can be encoded. And the researchers to this point, they say that the information can be read with 99.6% accuracy, which is really darn good, and in a 7.2 by 7.2 millimeter surface. That's tiny, little tiny millimeter surface. They were able to write 1.4 megs of digital information with these dyes. So it's compact, it's cheap, fairly easy, and they are developing it as a company now. The system writes information at an average rate of 128 bits per second, reading it at a rate of 469 bits per second, fastest reported read speed of any molecular information storage method to date.
Wow.
Oh. So potentially, all the other fancy high-tech molecular methods, maybe dye is the one that works to store our data forever.
Yeah. The ancient Sufi people used to put all of their traditional stories and their information that they wanted to save and keep, and all the things critical to their culture, into tapestries.
Yeah.
And they would do this for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is because they got taken over a lot. There was always another horde of somethings coming through and dispossessing them of their possessions. But the thing is, they would keep all the tapestries and the rugs and the stuff that were stolen from them would be kept, and would still have all of the culture encoded in them. So I guess they could go and look up their culture later if they found it again.
If they found it.
I guess you had to wait till there's like a museum or something displaying. Like, it would take a while. It's sort of like the long game, but the idea was that it would not get destroyed. It would not, like a text will get burned or a religious artifact will get smashed, but people will keep the tapestries. So there's always a chance you can get them back.
And this is similar to that. This is data storage in a physical format that, as long as somebody has these little slides somewhere, our national library or some cave in Iceland, wherever you decide to store these things, as long as somebody has them somewhere, it's at some point and I think it's interesting that you use the tapestry example, because this kind of being using colored dye for this as well, it's kind of it's similar. It's a little teeny tiny tapestries. Yeah. Little teeny tiny tapestries of fluorescent dye. Yeah. Which is, it's just amazing to think that as much data as we have, our storage to date is so temporary, and we have always thought too short term. And it's, it's good enough for now, and that's great. But how do we eventually preserve our cultures? How do we preserve all of the information that we deem important? I mean, I hope that we eventually, save all of the cat memes and cat videos on YouTube.
Oh gosh. Well, it's like
what gets saved?
One of the arguments I can see against having another new, bigger, gianter super collider, you haven't even really gotten through the data you've generated so far. Like, how many human years until you can get through that? I don't. The same thing with some of who were we interviewing who was doing dark matter detection, and she was explaining that the data she had collected was like grad students are going to be pouring through this for like the next couple decades because they collected so much data. It was a certain point where we either got to find a method to get through this data faster. It was something better than what we're calling machine learning, because that's still not, that hot. We need to get to a point where we can actually get through this data, or we just need to stop collecting it.
Yeah.
Focus on digestible meals.
On what? What? No. Yeah. I want all of the things.
Too much.
All the things. Have we made it to the end of our show?
I think we have.
Yeah,
and we managed to get there without Blair, which is amazing because I did not even know that was possible.
She usually keeps us on track, right? Makes us keep on the trail. Don't get off the trail; you'll get eaten by a cougar. I don't know.
Quick, somebody yawn.
No. Oh, thank you, everyone. We have made it to the end of another show. Justin, thanks for a great show. Thank you to Fada for help with social media, for help with our show notes. Thank you to Identity4 for recording the show. Thank you to our mods, Arnlor, Gord, everyone who does work to make sure that our chat rooms are happy, peaceful places for people who enjoy science. Let's keep it that way. And thank you to Rachel for her help and assistance for editing the show and all the other wonderful things. And I would like to thank our Patreon sponsors. for their support of TWIS. Thank you to Kent Northcote, Rick Loveman, Pierre Velazar, Ralphie Figueroa, John Watnaswamy, Carl Kornfeld, Karen Tazi, Woody MS, Andre Bassett, Chris Wozniak, Dave Bunn, Vegard Chefstad, Hal Snyder, Donathan Stiles, aka Don Stylo, John Lee, Ali Coffin, Maddie Perrin, Gaurav Sharma, Shubru, Don Mundis, Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Stu Pollock, Andrew Swanson, Fredus 104, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles Jack, Brian Carrington, Matt Bass, Sean and Nina Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenplo, Gene Tellier, Steve Leisman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Dana Pearson, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Kevin Railsback, Rock Me Day, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Artyom, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Arizona, support Aaron Lieberman for governor, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Mallory Sutter, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Mountain Sloth, Jim Drapeau, Sarah Chavez, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, E.O., Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Steve DeBell, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul Disney, David Simmerly, Patrick Pecoraro, Tony Steele, Ulysses Atkins, and Jason Roberts. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And if you would like to support TWIS on Patreon, head over to twis.org and click on the Patreon link. On next week's show,
we will be back Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 5 a.m. Central European Time, broadcasting live from our YouTube and Facebook channels and from twis.org/live. Want to listen to us as a podcast?
just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe too.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to stories will be available on our website, www.twis.org. And you can also sign up for a newsletter, maybe, if it's still a thing.
Yeah, and remember, our calendars for 2022 are available there as well. You can contact us directly, email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twisminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twis.org. Just put TWIS in the subject line so that your email doesn't get spam filtered into an intermittent variable thingamajigger that we don't really know what it is, and we don't know where it is, and we can't really tell much about it in the center of galaxy, because that might be bad. I mean, alternatively, it could end up in some old
Salt
feces with blue cheese and beer, but you don't want that either. So
now put TWIS somewhere in the subject line, please, people.
yeah, please.
You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jackson Fly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes due in the night, please let us know.
We will be back here next week, as we said, and we hope that you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer, and it shouldn't be news, that what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy.
Everybody! Everybody! It's the after show. It's the after show. Woo woo! It's the after show. Justin disappeared because it's the after show, and he usually disappears for the after show. But that means that it's just me right now. That's funny. That's funny.
Week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. Science.
Joseph Barney, this would be amazing if you could sub the Patreon. That would be fantastic. Love it. All of you there. Oh, you're here. Yes. Yes, Jezero. I'm sorry.
I've got a laundry list of
I mean,
items
I
I
wouldn't
want
be
to
here
address.
if
From
it weren't
stopping
for
global
you being
hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to
Like it's
promote more
because you're
rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. But how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop
happens in the
1
after
hour
show?
a week? This week in
Well,
science is
normally
coming
there's after
over.
talk. We answer questions. We talk about things that were not on the show. Sometimes we talk about things that were on the show and we talk about them in more depth. It all depends. Sometimes we don't. We just sit here and look at you uncomfortably. No, we don't really do that.
Science, science, science. This week in science.
This week in science.
This week in science. Science, science. This week in science.
This week in science.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science.
Feels so strange to not have the gong. Kai is doing well in school. He was saying yesterday, though, how it's so funny. He's like, I really, really, really wanted to go back to school, and I thought I love school. It's great, but I'm already tired of it. So, it happens. You start getting into the routine and the grind and just doing math for math's sake, and suddenly it's not as much fun anymore. But he's doing well, which is good. It's just weird though, because I still don't like having him eat in the cafeteria at school, and so every time it's like potentially gonna rain, I keep him home, so he's missing school quite a bit because there's still a pandemic. Which nobody cares anymore, but there's still a pandemic and I care. And so there's a vaccine coming for my child. There's a light at the end of the tunnel there for protection for him, even though I know, yes, the data suggests kids don't get it as severely as anyone else. Kids don't get long COVID as much as adults. There's lots of data that supports kids doing much, much better and having better outcomes. But when you're talking about your own child, it's hard to play the statistics. And I understand so many people and their concerns. I don't know about Kai on the Discord. I'll have to ask him. He did tell me that you had messaged. Wait, were you wearing that shirt the whole time? Were you wearing that NASA shirt the whole time?
Yeah.
Great shirt.
Thank you.
I like it. Well, Jerry Gallagher, in some places there is less viral spread. And when people are talking about the pandemic being over, that's just people being tired of it. Because the pandemic's not over. The pandemic is at this point in time becoming endemic. It is moving into something that we will deal with, like the measles, like the flu, like so many other diseases, viruses that become more common. And hopefully more and more of our population will have some degree of immunity. Some degree that makes it a little bit not as bad, right? That's the hope. That's why we vaccinate. That's what we try. Failure is not an option. Kai did not go to the sleepover. We did not let him do the sleepover. He was sad, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Everybody. Good night, Fada. He'll get to do more sleepovers in the future because I'm not letting him go to sleepovers right now.
Yeah. It's the time to be actively proactive about avoiding things like that.
Yeah, and it's just like I feel like I've been so careful for so long that just to like break my rules now at this point, and if something did go wrong, I'd be so upset with myself. Yeah. Yes, exactly, Shubru. He'll be able to go to sleepovers because he's alive and happy and not sick, and it'll be great. It'll be good. Yeah. Anyway, vaccinations improve. It's all good. Yeah, we got to take our time. We got to do what we need to do to keep ourselves healthy and happy and alive as long as we can be on this planet. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going to do another puzzle, and that's going to be fabulous. It's going to keep my head happy. Everything great. Oh, Glenn. I love the Australian Research and Space Exploration Agency. I have a t-shirt. It's fantastic. I love it. It's my favorite. The ARS, Australian Research and Space
Arse.
Exploration. Yeah, it's good. It's not over till it's over. That's right. Yeah, I've lost count of waves, Kevin Jones. I don't know about the waves. All I want to do is avoid going on a cruise. I'll just wave.
Yeah, I think cruises are gonna probably not be a thing I want to do anytime soon.
People still go on them. They really like them. I find them a little disturbing. How are things down there in Davis?
Yeah, things are good here.
Yeah.
Pandemic is still here. I don't think we've got many cases. I've not heard of anybody getting COVID in the longest time. Ish. But there's still pockets of, people everywhere who were refusing to get vaccinated. They just had a mandate to not have mandates in Texas. And right away, all these businesses are telling the governor that, explaining to the governor, so there's a federal mandate for masks, and there's some for, there's some that are out now for vaccination as well, but there's a federal mask mandate for most businesses. And businesses are like writing very kindly worded letters in response to the governor saying they can't have a mandate in Texas, saying, well, actually, that's a federal. Wow, you're a state. So the way it works is there's the state can make whatever, but we follow the federal guidelines because it's a higher form of government than the state government.
I think a lot of this, is pandering to the crowd, pandering to their audience. But at the same time, it's that
I don't think it is. So,
there's also the states' rights stuff. There are individuals who are pushing for breaking up
I got to stop real quick
federation.
because because I don't think it's pandering to the audience. It's like the way that the propaganda machine starts this big lie and then says, well, we got to investigate whether or not there was fraud in the election because so many of our constituents are concerned about this. Well, the reason so many of your constituents are concerned about it is because people like you and the propaganda machine have been putting that into their head. So it's not, I don't think they're pandering to an audience that doesn't want to wear masks so much as this is the end game of the thing that they put into the people's heads in the first place to keep them from getting vaccinated so they could sell these 2 or 3 different drugs that they want to treat it with in the aftermath, which is, it's almost been hand in hand. We don't need mandates, and here's these antibodies you can take in the hospital that'll keep you from dying from COVID. It's like, well,
there has been a lot of that, but I don't know, how much of that is really specifically planned as like, this is the way that we're going to go about it, or just taking advantage of the situation, having put money into things that might do well in that kind of and just being like, oh, look at that. That happens to be working very well for me. That's great.
Well, I'd say follow the money, but we have dark money in politics that doesn't allow us to follow the money for some reason. And I don't know why they wouldn't want us to be able to do that.
Something I found a computer science kind of thing, some code that people had, I think it's on GitHub, that people had put on GitHub, but it sounded like, from what the description that was written looked like, it looked as though the code would allow you to track money, like where that you could follow the money, really. And that I'm wondering, I'm like, what data sets can we get our hands on and actually apply this code to it to actually be able to figure out where money is coming from in some of these efforts, because it could really help us figure out who's paying for a lot of the anti-vaccine efforts, who's paying for, we know a lot about, who's pro fossil fuels and who's paying for a lot of anti-climate change messaging and that kind of stuff. We know that, but there's more out there that we don't know. How is money getting funneled? There's, all the what are they? They're not the Panama Papers. Is it Panama Papers? The papers.
It is the Panama
Papers. It just came out.
It's the
same, offshore funds.
International group of reporting people. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I should know what I'm talking about. But they it's the same group that exposed the Panama Papers that's now delved into the setting up of these trusts throughout mostly South Dakota. Looks like the hub of
it's like
hiding money through.
Yeah. All right, South Dakota. What do you have? I'm gonna go look at their financial stuff. What are you doing there? Pandora Papers. Mwahaha. Yes, that's what it is. Thank you, Aaron Lore. There's so much. There's so much going around. Part of Shubru, you're saying the hospital bills for COVID. So I'm wondering, how much is not necessarily specific investment in specific drugs or companies that make drugs, but even just having investments or financial ties to healthcare within the state, the healthcare industry within the state where they are passing the laws to benefit from that kind of stuff. And, even if it's not like we're going to plan to do it this way, it's, I'm making some money. That's nice. And then suddenly the decisions you make, they're a little biased. Or maybe they are because you're making money. But
I've
money in politics.
Corruption,
that's what it is.
It is, and it's rampant. It's like really rampant now.
It's the fall of Rome.
And I think I don't know if it's the fall of Rome. I think we'll be it could be. Maybe it is. Yeah, maybe these are the end days of the United States of America.
Or maybe we can come back from it. That's why I like science. Science is like, we can fix it. We can learn new things. Let's ask questions and do stuff. And yeah.
But that's being discouraged now.
Not everywhere. Science is not being discouraged. We encourage it.
Okay.
Scientific thinking, right?
Yeah.
There are many, many cities and states and counties where science is appreciated.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that is going to continue.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
yeah, Rome did fall
Lord.
multiple times. That's
Yep.
true. Yeah. And now it's Italy. So it could be worse.
Exactly. I mean, I like Italian food. No. Yeah, scientific thinking, always questioning, always trying to figure out how things work. It goes against the grain of the establishment, potentially, but
sometimes it isn't. It just depends on who's been elected this establishment, it seems.
Who is the establishment?
That seems to very much determine whether or not science is taken seriously or if it's heavily ignored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, Gaurav, yes. Science is my coping mechanism. It's true. It's true. We can use the fact that people are doing really cool things and excited about figuring things out. What have you discovered? Oh, that's exciting. I can get excited about it for a very small period of time, and hopefully it'll carry me through more days. This week was also Ada Lovelace Day. That was yesterday. Today was National Fossil Day. Yesterday was...
Ada Lovelace is the oh gosh, she was like the brilliant mathematician lady who, what was it? She had an affair with somebody famous.
Charles Babbage.
Who thought she was brilliant. And
he had a calculating machine, and she basically was like, oh, I can make that calculating machine a little bit better. And she did.
Okay.
She made the first computer, pretty much. Yeah. Yep. The first computer programmer. She said, oh, look at your funny little computing machine, Charles. Let me do math to it.
Physics police plans to flee California. Where would you flee California to? Like,
someplace that's not on fire.
Okay, well, if you that's all.
Oh, fine. Yes, Glenn Brady. Ada Lovelace was around 1850-ish. We've come a long way, baby. I tell ya. We've come a long way. Thanks to women like Ada Lovelace. Got pocket computer devices. It's amazing.
Right.
It's amazing. What else was this week? Oh, yeah. What was a lot of news sources, and I think this is one of the first times I've really seen it widespread in reporting, was the fact that there were Spanish sailors who knew about North America before Columbus. To me, it's now Indigenous Peoples Day, which is fantastic. But that we were the New World, according to Columbus. Columbus just came in and was like, I got this, and he was a big liar, and he was awful, and people like kicked him out, and then he was put in jail, and then other bad people took over, but he was like bad. The bad people didn't like him.
Wait, what? Are you talking about before he did the genocide?
No, after the genocide.
Oh, after the genocide, the bad part was that he was a liar,
bad people
too.
Were like, ooh,
and on
the
top
genocide
of it,
was
bad. On top of it, he's a liar. Oh,
liar.
Well,
yes.
Well, yeah, actually, it was so horrendous. The reports that were coming back for the treatment of the peoples here was so horrendous that it was shocking even the people back in Spain who were buying slaves, to the point where they were like, but this is the origin story of Caribbean of Caribbean cannibalism.
Yeah.
Is because they started telling these stories of, well, these people were eating other humans, and that was so horrific that seemed to make them quiet about how they were being treated. It was all nonsense. It was all just lies.
Yeah.
But yeah, they think he's responsible for the working to death of, I think, at least 250,000 people in the Caribbean. And that's not even, the spread of disease and the rest of the things that happen afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just really, I think that President Biden acknowledged and named Indigenous Peoples Day, that we've given back the national monument status to the Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante. Like this week, it's like a really big week. We have so much more work to do, but the acknowledgement, just widespread acknowledgement of just people have talked about, it's like Columbus Day. We grew up with it, and it was like, oh yeah, Columbus Day. And we learned this Columbus was responsible for all this stuff and he's great. Well, no, he wasn't. And that story is getting told further and wider, and the truth is getting out there, that's amazing. The fact that people are not putting up with it and saying, we don't want this story told anymore. We need more truthful stories. And that, I think, is really cool. Yeah. That gives me hope.
And besides, the Vikings were trading with Canadian Inuits hundreds and hundreds of years before already. Like, that's an established thing.
Been here.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of people that tried to visit over the time, perhaps. But we now know the native people were here for 30,000 years.
Yep.
If you're one of those...
so there's the jawbone 30,000 years ago. And then this week, we didn't talk about it. There's something that they found evidence of tobacco being smoked or I don't know, cultivated, but at least smoked, 10 to 12,000 years ago? Whoops. I hit a button.
Yeah, there's another study where they had debunked, I guess, an older theory that a population of Native Americans came from Japan. As early something about 15,000 years ago. That's been completely ruled out. They were like, no, there's no genetic or even morphological tooth similarity to any of the peoples who had populated Japan. Nope. The people went to Japan, they just isolated there. They just didn't do anything. They didn't go anywhere else. But yeah, so, whenever I hear somebody talking about in America, this is very specific to the conversation. You have to hear the conversation in America.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who's like, yeah, they need to, give Palestine back to the Palestinians. They shouldn't be living, the Israelis shouldn't be building those settlements. And I'm like, well, do you own a home? Yeah. Would you just do me a favor and hand that over to whatever local tribe used to own this land that you are occupying? Well, no, that's completely different. Oh, okay. Yeah, and then Israel has a right to be in Israel because that was an ancestral land. Okay, do you own a home? Do you own property in the United States? You do. You own okay, that's nice. Hey, could you turn that over to whatever tribe used to have that property because that's their ancestral home? Well, that's totally different. No, it isn't. You're a hypocrite too. And libertarians, all libertarians in the United States who believe like the fundamental thing is you should have property rights but no government, which is also a joke because you have to have government to establish property rights.
Who enforces property rights if not a government?
It's a nonsense.
That makes zero sense.
But it's all about property rights. You have the right to, except you don't. Then that doesn't belong to you because you never purchased it because it was never purchased from the people it was stolen from. So you have to give that back too. And really, like all of America
it's like all those museum artifacts that like the British Museum had that were stolen from other countries that they're now
Yeah.
having to give back to the countries
Oh!
they came from.
Yeah, if you look at Indiana Jones, he's a cultural thief
Oh,
over
he's
and
a
over
thief.
again. Yeah. Yeah. So in a very real sense, the United States is occupied land. And I always get this sense that the native peoples are just like sitting back, just like, these are gonna run the course. They've got to. This has got to come to an end at some point.
Some
So we can
point.
have the land back. But it continues to be. They were tearing up this hillside that was a sacred spot along the border to build the wall. When then they never built it, but they still tore up the land. The whole thing with Bear's Ear and over and over and over and over and over again. And then again, specific to the United States and cultural references, like there's the beach that got given back. There was a black family that owned a beach in Southern California.
Yes. Yeah, oceanfront property. They had a
Oceanfront
resort.
property.
They had a resort, and it was taken from them. Yes.
Is it? Oh, and so.
Yeah. But they just got it given back.
Well, the Ku Klux Klan tried to force them out, and they didn't get forced out. They refused to leave, and they, stood there. And then the city used eminent domain to take the land, and then they just got it back. But then I'm also like, man, there's a tribe. There's a tribe out there that's going, okay, well, I get that you gave it back to that guy, but actually that wasn't even theirs to own in the first place, because that still was our land. Like, it's like a voice in the background that America continues to ignore about who this country actually rightfully should belong to.
Yeah. Is it Stewie74 is saying the Bruce family was taken from in our YouTube chat.
Yeah. Which is a great story. And the city worker, I saw the little interview where she's in tears about the fact that it didn't happen sooner.
Yeah.
But then there's again, there's a reservation land somewhere. There's a tribe that's sitting there watching the television on this going, Sonny, dig at the beach. How hard was that? All right, just like
Jojo.
Now do that everywhere. Do that everywhere over and over again. And if you're trying to get things right.
You can try and get more things right. I think, it's acknowledgments, it's conversations, it's little steps until bigger steps. And there are a lot of wrongs that need to be righted. Yeah, or in Lord. Now do it in Europe. Exactly. I think humanity has it in us. We contain multitudes. We have. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we're full of full of microbes.
We're full of ourselves.
We're full of microbes.
Vim, vigor, vitality.
When you're saying it's not the same as native tribes, so one of the stories that, if you're talking about like Bear's Ear, people have living memories, or current tribes. They're not ancient history. They're concurrent living today now, and that history is not as long ago as a lot of people seem to think it is.
Yeah.
You're talking 1924.
Yeah.
The Bruce family had purchased that property.
Same time period, there was still stuff happening with the Native Americans. And
70, 80 years before that.
Yeah.
There was almost no settlers in California yet. Okay? The land got taken in that time frame that you're talking about. And usually with genocide or enslavement and attempted conversion. There was a mission. There's was it third, fourth grade, something like that? The kids got to write about missions in California.
Yeah. Yep. There's usually a field trip to one.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And and I had my one of my kids also hand in a second paper after they wrote their paper about the missions. That was, I said, yeah, just take a stack of papers and just staple it all together. And I said, the other side, and don't write anything. And that's really what it is we don't have that record of it. You haven't been presented with that information of the living people. If the living people were wrongfully removed, that would count. But you're already talking about 1924. Those aren't living people. There's living members of that family. There are living members of family tribes. There are living members who were in basically native internment camps in Canada, right, who are living members and whose families have been subjected to all the pain of the abuse that took place on their parents and grandparents. Stephen Ring says natives were at war with each other as well. Yeah, well, they seem to be sustaining for 30,000 years. Let's see how well the United States does. We're
Exactly. How long are we going to be here?
70, 80 years? How are we going to do?
Yeah. Have a great night, Joseph Barney. Great that you could join us. Yeah, we should all get our good sleep. But there is a mental framing for life and how we do things that has been we've been survival oriented and money oriented. It's the capitalistic, like, very resource driven, and got to get my stuff now. Potentially there are families thinking about accumulating enough resources to be able to control things for long term, but really there has been not enough long-term thinking. And really it's, as Stephen Rain's bringing up, we can't take it with us, right? Who's going to take it with us? So is there a way that we can incorporate different ways of being and different ways of thinking into capitalism so that, we don't get rid of everything, but live more sustainably, exist on this planet longer, actually thrive as opposed to struggling, get to a point where humanity is not suffering and struggling, where we're living. Yeah, I feel like there's solutions out there. I like thinking optimistically about these things.
Well, so part of it is, I think part of the problem that we have in America is America's a very young country. And
yes.
It doesn't have and it has a system of capitalism that's been interpreted as winner take all and, ruthless dog eat dog world kind of a thing in a lot of aspects. Europe does not quite roll like that. And part of the reason is, if you go, I don't know, I've been spending a lot of time in Copenhagen, right? Copenhagen has buildings from that are from the 1600s, older than the 1600s. But the point is that there are people who have been persisting on the same land for, 1,000 years. Old cultures figure out ways to get along with one another. They figure out, hopefully, ways to manage things like waste and then handle their environment. And they tackle those issues. And things like education, healthcare, yeah, that has to come with it. In America, we're so spread out that there was always this, if you don't like it, you could just go over the next ridge and take over that land and kill those people and take their land and then farm until somebody comes and kills your family and takes your land or whatever. It's just been, we haven't had a whole lot of experience. You look at a city like San Francisco. I think for all the problems that San Francisco has, it's working without, the city of San Francisco is working on the city of San Francisco. The rest of the world almost doesn't exist. They're just trying to make everybody be able to cohabitate there. California, I think, is doing a better job than most states in the United States in terms of budget, in terms of healthcare providing, in terms of education providing, that sort of thing. But it's still a long way off from, one of the things that's kind of amazing me, somebody was mentioning, talking about immigrants. Well, they had the Muslim ban recently, and then they added the Catholic ban, keep people coming in from South America. And then they didn't want people from these S countries who are probably all Christians, mostly anyway, of some sort. And then what do you end up with? Well, you end up with some Northern European white folk who they want to have over. Like, those are the good countries. Guess what? Right. Those are socialist countries. Those are countries that employ a tremendous amount of socialism. Oh, you can't have that.
They're not interested in leaving and coming here because they got it great over there.
Yeah, they want to come here.
They don't want to come here.
And then
that's funny.
And so at some point, that philosophy of end up wanting nobody but yourself, and then you tell yourself, your political ilk then is the only people you want to be around, and then you tell your political ilk don't get a vaccination, and then so then it's a death cult, antisocial death cult. Is that a way to put it?
Possibly.
I think that might be. I don't know. I think I've rambled. Just in 2024. That's the last thing this world could handle. I would be like, here's just in 2024. We don't need a higher minimum wage. We need lower housing. We need to cap
more affordable housing.
Rent. More affordable housing. If you raise everybody's minimum wage 50%, guess what the rent's going to go up over the next few years? 50%. Yeah, you can't raise the minimum wage. It won't do anything.
And that's another problem with the minimum basic income, or the universal basic income.
It just goes to property owners.
If everybody has this set, then it just lifts it up.
Goes directly to property owners. Yeah. Which more and more is owned by hedge funds. I would make it illegal for hedge funds or Wall Street to
invest in
housing.
Property. Yes.
And,
you can invest in commercial
housing.
Business properties, invest in hotels, invest in the Taco Bell or whatever. That's great. Don't invest in residential housing.
Okay. Here's also the thing. If you are going to buy properties and rent them,
rent is too darn high.
First of all, I think the rent's too darn high. We should be capped. Or if you don't have to cap rent, what I think you should make a federal law that allows community by community, district by district. We'll make it down to the legislative districts
to set their own.
To vote on rent control. Because right now we can't even vote for it in California, even if we want to. And what's more, here's the other kicker. Here's the other one I'm gonna go on. No, maybe that was it. I mean, it's just housing.
Actually, never mind. We already got rid of leaf blowers, so that's cool.
If you're going to rent property and profit off of that, that's fine. You got a couple houses you want, but you have to have at least, at the very minimum, an associate's degree in housing. Because you have all these people who are in charge of this is what the world doesn't understand. The people who are in charge of housing, all these people who are renting, which is like more than half of Americans, the people who are their landlords have no interest in housing. They are not in the housing providing business. They're not educated, trained, or give two ticks about what it's like to live in that property. They're a business person who wants to make the money part, but not do the work part of being actually dedicated to housing, which is why every rental property has the oldest, horriblest appliances, the refrigerator that's missing a shelf and makes that weird noise all night, and then
it threw a bearing somewhere. That's no good.
Can landlords who own the property hire someone with some degree? Property managers? So you can make that rule for property managers. Absolutely. They have to be those people. But then they have to have the power of the purse where they can go, okay, well, we collected the rent from your properties this month, but we've got to put in new appliances so you're not getting any of the payment this month. So I mean, you would need somebody who could pull those purse strings.
Physics police, I think that's funny.
Yeah, it's a good old Hey, actually, if it sounds
joke, right?
If it sounds that bad, it could be like the old kind of compressors. Those ones ran forever. Each one took a coal factory to run those old fridges. But boy, with the big old compressor, they worked forever. And I would get rid of the dark money thing.
Lot.
I think the whole dark money funding
That
of
is-
politics. I'm not saying you'd cap it at this point, but boy, you just should know who's giving money to who. I think that keeps corruption to a minimum.
Yep. It should be transparent.
Yeah.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Also, it should
Maybe.
be transparent, which is
Can.
not, which is how many single family homes are owned by corporate interests. Because that's something that they tried to make a bill in California just to see that, and it got knocked down by those moneyed interests. Guar is paying
finance it.
$2,100 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. Where'd you get that good of a deal?
I know.
Is that rent? That must be rent controlled.
In the Bay Area. I know.
Yeah.
Patrick wants to know what there is to do in Portland.
Okay, first thing
Be
you
there
got to
in
do.
2 weeks for a couple of days. You got to go to Fried Egg. I'm in love.
Fried egg, I'm in love. You got to go there. You got to get the, you can get the
Yeah.
yolk ono or the egg zeppelin. I think egg zeppelin was my favorite. It's the best egg sausage sandwich kind of a combo thing you can find anywhere on the planet. So go there for sure. And then I don't know, they might have museums or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, for a couple of days. So the big spots in Portland are the Japanese Garden, the Oregon Zoo, OMSI. The Rose Garden this time of year is going to be not very full of roses, so I wouldn't recommend the Rose Test Garden.
What's
But-
the other garden? What's that one?
The rhododendron.
The rhododendrons are probably nice.
Yeah, they might be nice right now. I don't know. I don't
what
know.
this-
I don't know if it's roadie season
still-
right now. I mean,
it's
spring
still a
is the
nice-
spring. Yeah, it's still a beautiful garden. The
Yeah, it's still
rhododendron
great.
garden is
Yeah.
gorgeous. And it's kind of rainy, so Oaks Park Amusement Park is not going to be great. But if you're flying here, Horsebrass Pub is amazing. Yeah, Horsebrass is awesome. British pubby type place. The McMenamins are pretty awesome. The food is awful, but the locations are all very interesting. Yeah, Shubru, that's good recommendations there. Of course, Powell Bookstore.
Oh yeah, it's a cool
Um,
big bookstore.
Yeah, if you want to go
But-
get views of the city, there's Mount Tabor for a view on the southeast, and then if you go to the Pittock Mansion in the west, those are good for getting views of the city. If you want to leave the city, I would recommend going just up the gorge a little ways and going to the Sugar Pine Diner. It's a great little drive-through. It's fantastic. Sugar Pine. There's lots of restaurants and awesome things. Yes, by Reed College, the Rhododendron Garden. That's right. Multnomah Falls. Yes. It's beautiful any time of year. Yeah, there's tons of beer here if you like beer. There's good cider here also if you like cider. There's all sorts of things. I don't know what you like though. So,
Portland's got it.
got all sorts of things to do here.
There's a a hat museum?
Yeah, there's a hat museum. Oh, there's the what's the weird museum?
If you can get in, the hat museum is tough.
Oh. Yes, and there's great wines too,
Is it an
Shubru.
obscurities type of museum you're thinking of?
What's the hold on.
See, it's nice. Yeah, big sciencey type exhibits.
The Peculiarium is a fun spot. You have to go to the Peculiarium because it's peculiar and creepy.
But still, the first thing you have to do. The first
no,
place
the
you
Hat
have
Museum
to go.
isn't the weird one. No. Yes, Stewie 74. That's the one. The freaky but true Peculiarium and Museum. That's the one. It's
But the
fantastic.
very first thing is fried
Yeah.
egg. I'm in.
Friday Game of Love. It's amazing. And then there are food carts, all the food carts everywhere. Oh, so much good food.
At least one of which is Fried Egg I'm in Love. They also have a food. They have a brick and mortar, yeah, if you like that.
You
or
do.
You can go into the square across from Powell's, right across from Powell's there in that big square. There's a food truck. Sometimes food tastes a little bit better out of the back of the truck.
So there's a.
I kept skipping the Van Gogh
museum.
show thing. I kept wanting to go to it, and then it would like not be in the city where I was, and then it would come back, and it would go, and then I missed it. I did want to go to it, even in during the pandemic. I was like, that would be worth it, but I didn't go.
There's another museum that I haven't been to yet that I want to check out. It's called the Zymoglyphic Museum, and I think it's some guy who's an artist and like puts weird creatures together and lots of odd things, but you have to like, and it's like in somebody's garage. No, I really want to go.
That's some towny insider knowledge.
Oh yes, it's super. Yeah, I found out about it like a year or so ago, but because of the pandemic, I haven't been anywhere. But that's on my list, the Zymoglyphic Museum. And just so you know, Voodoo Donuts is basically like kitschy, touristy. Like it's funny looking donuts and stuff, but there are way better donuts in town. If you need donuts.
I do not.
Yeah, I don't need donuts.
Never really like needed a donut. I've been like, that's what I got. I gotta get my hands on a donut today.
No, Kevin Jones, you're saying Voodoo Donuts. I said no Voodoo Donuts. Blue Star. There's good donuts. Dots Donuts. Yeah, no, that's not good beer. That sounds awful. Blech.
All right, I gotta go.
Okay, is it bedtime?
Yeah.
Yeah, Patrick, get in touch with me if that was not enough. Rogue Brewery is great. They have a Rogue Brewery place where you can have beer and food here in Portland downtown. That's pretty fun, but kind of locally flavor. But yeah, is it time for going to sleep now? Let's do that.
All right. Well, how's that work? So then I would go.
Say
goodnight. Say goodnight, Kiki.
Good night, Justin.
That's not how. No, that's not. You're doing it wrong. So I'd say
Good night, Kiki.
And then you would say
good night, everyone.
No, that's not it.
No.
That's still not
say
it.
Say good night, Justin.
Good night, Justin. And then together we'll say good night, everybody else.
Good night. Okay, we did it now. That's a good rehearsal, actual. I hope everyone has a fantastic week. We'll be back again next week for more sciencey fun. Thanks for joining for Justin's run for 2024.
Yeah, I might go for
Total eclipse of the Justin. Mm-hmm. And we should start making plans now for 2024 This Week in Science total solar eclipse chase across America. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's time for bed. So I'll see you all next week. See you next week, Justin.
See you next week, if not sooner.
If not sooner. Take care, everyone. Stay healthy, stay well, stay sciencey.